This is the brief on who Sir Alex Ferguson is. By diving into historical sports archives and a Harvard Business School case study, we're unpacking the career and methods of arguably the greatest football manager in sports history. First, just look at the sheer scale of his record. We're talking 27 years managing Manchester United from 1986 to 2013, snagging an astonishing 38 major trophies, including 13 Premier League titles and 2 Champions Leagues. He even got a knighthood after that historic 1999 treble. But seriously, how do you survive 27 years in a cutthroat industry where coaches literally get fired after a 3-game losing streak? Second, you do it by focusing on the foundation. He set out to build a true club, not just a temporary team. By modernizing the youth program, he brought up the famous class of '92, including legends like David Beckham and Ryan Giggs, proving critics completely wrong when they claimed you can't win anything with kids. It's kind of like a tech giant heavily investing in long-term R&D rather than just buying expensive, short-term, off-the-shelf products. Finally, we have to talk about his ruthless evolution. He sustained the success over decades through strict discipline and constant reinvention. He built 5 distinct winning squads and kept absolute control, literally cutting millionaire stars if they stepped out of line. Plus, he created the legendary Fergie Time by systematically practicing late-game comebacks. Really, he wasn't just a coach. He was to Manchester United exactly what Steve Jobs was to Apple. Ultimately, Sir Alex Ferguson wasn't just a football manager, but a master architect of a global sports empire built on youth, absolute discipline, and relentless reinvention.
Imagine firing your absolute best, most beloved senior executive every 4 years. Not because they are failing, but, well, precisely because they are getting comfortable.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible strategy, right?
Right, but that is actually the exact blueprint Sir Alex Ferguson used to dominate global football for nearly 3 decades. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
It is a crazy story.
It really is. Today, we are taking a Harvard Business Review case study, along with some articles and reviews, to really decode Ferguson's spectacular career.
We are going to explore how he transformed struggling football clubs into these massive global juggernauts.
Exactly. We will break down his brutal but brilliant leadership strategies and extract those never-given life lessons that you could apply to your own leadership journey today.
To really understand how he achieved that unprecedented dominance, winning 38 trophies in 26 years at Manchester United, you have to look at his psychological foundation.
Right, the stuff forged way before all those trophies.
Exactly. So he grew up in the Govan district of Glasgow, which was entirely surrounded by the shipyards.
Oh yeah, very blue collar.
Very blue collar, very gritty. And that environment built a fierce mental toughness in him.
Which he immediately weaponized, right?
Yeah.
Like in his early days managing Aberdeen.
Oh, absolutely. At the time, Scottish football was totally monopolized by 2 entrenched giants, Celtic and Rangers.
Right.
And Ferguson broke that monopoly by instilling this intense siege mentality. He didn't just tell his players they were underdogs. He convinced them the media, the referees, basically the entire establishment were actively conspiring against them.
Wow, so that turns a locker room into a literal bunker. Suddenly, they aren't just playing to win, they're fighting for survival against a hostile world.
Exactly. But then, when he arrived at Manchester United in 1986, that strategy had to evolve.
Because he realized he couldn't just build a winning squad, he had to build a lasting institution.
Yeah, so he completely revamped the youth program. He cultivated teenagers like Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, David Beckham, basically building them up to serve as the core of the club.
This feels a lot like a tech startup deciding not to buy off-the-shelf software or poach expensive executives for a quick fix.
Right.
Instead, they prioritize long-term R&D. You build your proprietary tech from the ground up so it's just completely woven into the company's DNA.
That is a great way to look at it. Developing your own talent does something crucial in a high-stakes environment. It manufactures compliance and loyalty.
Because they literally owe you their career.
Exactly. A player who comes up through your academy is far less likely to challenge your authority compared to, say, a multi-millionaire transfer brought in from the outside.
Okay, so that explains the early foundation. But maintaining a loyal culture gets incredibly complicated when you look at his strategy for sustaining dominance.
Yeah, this is where the Harvard Business Review study maps out his famous 4-year cycle.
Right, where he was visualizing the team years into the future and actively cutting established veterans right as they aged.
Yes, before they actually declined on the pitch.
Wait, cutting loyal veterans who bled for the club's success? I have to push back here. Doesn't that sound incredibly toxic? How do you maintain a unified culture if everyone knows they were on a ticking clock?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. but it was an act of organizational survival. Ferguson understood that nostalgia is the enemy of progress.
So if players get too comfortable, the hunger dies.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about age. He demanded absolute control. The moment a player disrupted team harmony, well, no matter how famous they were gone.
Which brings us to names like Roy Keane, who was essentially the team's ruthless on-field general, or Ruud van Nistelrooy, a prolific star striker.
Right, huge names. But the second they challenged his authority or publicly criticized teammates, he shipped them out.
Just gone. No hesitation.
None. If you are managing a team right now, think about your own high-performing but disruptive star. Ferguson's rule is that no individual's output is worth sacrificing the manager's control.
Wow. And he applied that same rigorous control to high-pressure moments on the pitch, too.
Oh, you mean Fergie Time?
Yes, Fergie Time. He became famous for his team scoring winning goals in the final moments of a match.
Because they ran repetitive practice drills specifically for the last 10, 5, or 3 minutes of a game. By practicing specifically for the 87th minute, Ferguson removed the panic from trailing late.
He replaced the emotion of desperation with the muscle memory of execution. The players didn't have to think, they just fell back on their training.
But that level of execution only works if the players you bring in share the exact same drive as the legends you just cut.
Right, so he deliberately recruited bad losers and refused to allow a single bad training session.
Which is why true leadership isn't just about tactical brilliance. It is about making your high standards so contagious that the team begins policing itself.
So eventually Ferguson didn't have to yell at a player for slacking off. The other players simply couldn't tolerate their teammate not giving everything.
Exactly. His Scottish clan motto literally translates to sweeter after difficulties. That intense pressure fueled him.
And even in retirement, he admitted he deeply misses the pressure of those high-stakes games.
It really shows that long-term success requires a paradox. You need the patient vision to build a foundation from the ground up, balanced with the ruthless short-term adaptability to tear it down and rebuild every 4 years.
You really can't just rely on a safe, static blueprint. You have to be willing to evolve, even when it hurts.
You really do.
Which leaves you with a final question to ponder today. If building a lasting legacy requires constantly dismantling and rebuilding your own successful creations, what current success in your own life might you need to tear down to reach your next level?